The message came through the Deep Space Network at exactly 3 in the morning. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was the first human to see it, his coffee growing cold as he stared at the encrypted transmission on his screen. His hands moved quickly across the keyboard, breaking through the alien security codes that were supposed to keep this information secret for another 3 days. The words on his screen made his blood run cold. The Galactic Council had voted. Earth was no longer humanity's home. Emperor Vaxon of the Threxian Empire had cast the final vote, and the decision was final. Humans had 100 years to leave their planet and relocate somewhere else in the galaxy. The Council would take Earth and turn it into a nature preserve, as if 8 billion people were nothing more than an infestation to be cleared out. Jake read the document 3 times, making sure he understood every word. The decree would arrive through official channels in 72 hours. The Council expected humanity to receive the news, accept it quietly, and begin a century-long process of packing up their entire civilization and moving to some distant world the Council deemed acceptable. He picked up his phone and made the first call. Within an hour, every government on Earth knew what was coming. Within 6 hours, emergency meetings were happening in every capital city. Within 12 hours, the leaders of Earth had made a decision that would change everything. They were not going to wait for the official decree. They were not going to spend a century begging the Council for mercy. They were going to disappear before the Council even knew they had discovered the secret. Director Paul Chen stood in front of the United Earth Assembly, his face calm, but his voice carrying the weight of what he was about to say. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation, every major organization, every group that had a stake in humanity's future. "We have 70 hours before the Council's decree reaches us officially," Paul said. "I am proposing that we use those 70 hours to vanish completely. We take everything that matters. We leave nothing behind but empty buildings and silence." The room exploded with questions and arguments. Ambassador Nicole Grant from the European sector stood up. "You want to evacuate the entire planet in less than 3 days? That is impossible." "No," Paul said firmly. "It is difficult. But we have 12,000 ships that can travel through deep space. We have colony equipment already built and waiting. We have people who are angry enough and scared enough to work without sleeping. If we push ourselves harder than we have ever pushed before, we can be gone in 60 hours. Commander Greg Phillips pulled up a holographic display showing ship locations, population centers, and resource stockpiles. Every commercial vessel, every military ship, every transport that can break atmosphere will be conscripted. We double the passenger capacity, triple it if we have to. Comfort does not matter. Survival matters." Karen White, the civilian representative, looked at the numbers and shook her head. "You are talking about moving 8 billion people. The chaos alone will kill thousands. The Council will kill all of us eventually," Jake Morrison said from his position near the military section. "They want our planet. Today they vote to banish us. Tomorrow they vote to exterminate us because we are taking too long to leave. We either disappear now on our terms or we wait and let them destroy us on theirs." The vote took less than an hour. Every representative agreed. Operation Silent Exodus was approved. The next 60 hours became a blur of movement and noise and desperate action. Captain Henry Blake commanded a colony ship called the Venture. It was designed to carry 5,000 passengers in relative comfort. Within 8 hours of the authorization, he had 12,000 people crammed into every available space. The cargo holds became living areas. The maintenance tunnels held families huddled together with their belongings in plastic bags. His first officer, Lieutenant Amy Porter, watched another shuttle dock with 500 more people. "The ship cannot handle this many. The life support will fail." "Then we fix it," Henry said. "And if we cannot fix it, we pray it holds together long enough to get us somewhere safe. We are not leaving anyone behind." Similar scenes played out at every spaceport on Earth. The cruise ship Starhaven was designed for luxury tours of the solar system. Captain Steve Rogers now had 40,000 people packed into spaces that were meant for 5,000 wealthy tourists. The swimming pools were drained and turned into sleeping areas. The restaurants became distribution points for food rations. Every deck was crowded with people who had left their homes with whatever they could carry. In Africa, work crews dismantled solar panel arrays that powered entire regions. The panels were loaded onto cargo ships along with the technicians who knew how to install them on new worlds. Nothing useful would be left for the Council to take. Linda Hayes coordinated the evacuation of museums and cultural centers. Priceless art, ancient books, historical artifacts from every civilization Earth had ever known were packed into crates and loaded onto dedicated archive ships. The Mona Lisa was wrapped in protective foam and secured in a climate-controlled container. The Hope Diamond went into a vault alongside crown jewels from a dozen nations. Every piece of human history that could be moved was taken. "We are not just saving people," Linda told her exhausted team. "We are saving who we are. Our past, our culture, our identity. Earth is just rocks and water. Humanity is what we carry with us." Jake Morrison worked from a command center deep inside a mountain in Colorado. Every military asset was either being loaded onto carrier ships or rigged to self-destruct. Weapons, vehicles, defensive satellites, research stations, everything that had military value was taken or destroyed. The Council would inherit an empty planet with no defenses and no technology. "Sir, we have 18 hours before the Council ship arrives in communication range," Officer Danny Cross reported. "Then we have 18 hours to finish," Jake said. "Speed up every operation. Cut the safety margins if you have to. Just get it done." Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan stayed behind in the orbital shipyards with a small team. While everyone else fled, they worked on a final surprise for the Council. Every satellite in Earth orbit was reprogrammed. Every automated system was set to lock down and erase itself. Every database was rigged to wipe clean if anyone tried to access it without the proper codes. "When we leave, I want them to find nothing but ghosts," Lisa said to her assistant Frank Morris. "Every system dead. Every file erased. Every facility booby-trapped. Let them have an empty tomb instead of a prize." The evacuation ships began departing with 40 hours on the clock. They did not head toward the colony worlds that humanity had been slowly developing for the past 50 years. Those worlds were too obvious. The Council knew about them and would search there first. Instead, the fleet scattered in 17 different directions, heading toward regions of space that the Council had surveyed and dismissed as worthless. The ships disappeared into the dark spaces between stars, toward systems with harsh planets and thin atmospheres, toward worlds that offered nothing but hard work and harder living. The Council had assumed only primitive species would settle in such difficult places. They were about to learn how wrong they were. By the time 58 hours had passed, Earth was silent. The cities still stood, but no lights shone in the windows. The streets were empty. The spaceports were abandoned. 8 billion people had vanished as if they had never existed. 2 hours later, the Council's ship entered the solar system. Ambassador Xyloth stood on the bridge, preparing to deliver the decree that would banish humanity from their homeworld. He had a speech prepared, full of diplomatic language and false sympathy. He would give the humans their instructions and then leave them to their century of grief and displacement. But as his ship approached Earth, the sensors showed something impossible. There were no communications. No ships in orbit. No energy signatures from the surface, nothing. "Scan the planet," Xyloth ordered, confusion replacing his earlier confidence. The results made no sense. The cities were intact but empty. The power grids were shut down systematically. There were no humans anywhere. Not on Earth, not in orbit, not on the Moon or Mars or any of the settlements in the solar system. "Where are they?" his aide Kelrix whispered. Xyloth stared at the empty planet below and realized the truth. Somehow the humans had known. They had discovered the secret decree and decided not to wait for the official notification. They had packed up their entire civilization and disappeared into the void. He ordered landing parties to the surface. Teams went to New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and a dozen other major cities. Every report was the same. Empty buildings, abandoned homes, streets with no people. It was not the chaos of panic. It was the precision of planning. In the chamber where the United Earth Assembly had met, they found a message on the main display screen. It activated automatically when the first alien walked into the room. The message was simple, written in every major galactic language. "You wanted us gone. We are gone. Do not bother looking for us. Earth is yours now. Enjoy your empty victory." The message was signed by Director Paul Chen and dated 71 hours earlier, 1 hour before the decree had even been transmitted through the secure channels. Xyloth stood in the empty chamber and felt something he had not expected. "Fee?" The ships lifted off from Earth in waves that never seemed to end. Every spaceport was crowded with people who had left their homes carrying whatever they could fit in a single bag. Families huddled together in departure lounges that were designed for hundreds but now held thousands. Children cried. Parents tried to stay calm. Everyone knew they were leaving their home planet forever, and they were doing it in such a rush that there was barely time to say goodbye. Captain Henry Blake watched his crew work beyond exhaustion to get the venture ready for departure. The ship's engines were running hot, pushed harder than the safety manuals recommended. The life support systems were already struggling with twice their rated capacity, and they were still loading more people. "We have a problem," Amy Porter said, pulling up a display that showed red warning indicators across half the ship's systems. "The water recycling cannot handle this many people. We will run out of drinking water in 3 weeks. Then we reach our destination in 2 weeks," Henry said. "Cut the rations if you have to. We just need to survive long enough to get somewhere we can land." A family of 4 stood in front of him, the parents looking scared and the children too young to understand what was happening. The father held their identification papers with shaking hands. "We were told to report to the venture. Is there still room?" Henry looked at his ship's manifest. They were already 3,000 people over capacity. He looked at the family and made his decision. "There is always room. Get on board." The ships kept coming. Military transports designed to carry troops and equipment now carried civilians and their belongings. Cargo haulers that normally moved freight between planets now had passenger compartments welded into their holds. Even old mining ships that had been retired for safety violations were pulled back into service, patched up just enough to make the journey. Captain Steve Rogers stood on the bridge of the Star Haven and watched the passenger count climb past 50,000. The ship's computer kept flashing warnings that they were violating every safety regulation ever written. He ignored them all. Safety regulations meant nothing if everyone was dead or enslaved. "Sir, we have structural stress on the lower decks," his engineer reported. "The ship was never meant to carry this much weight." "Reinforce the weak points," Steve ordered. "Use cargo straps, welding equipment, whatever you can find. We are not leaving anyone behind just because the ship was not built for this." Down on Earth, the evacuation continued with brutal efficiency. Every person had been assigned to a ship based on their location and the nearest available transport. There was no time for people to choose where they went or who they traveled with. Families were separated. Friends lost track of each other. All that mattered was getting everyone off the planet before the council arrived. Linda Hayes worked in the Smithsonian with a team that had not slept in 30 hours. They were packing artifacts with a speed that would have horrified museum curators in normal times. Priceless paintings were wrapped in protective cloth and stacked in crates. Ancient pottery was packed with minimal cushioning. There was no time for proper preservation techniques. They just had to grab everything they could and hope it survived the journey. "We cannot take it all," one of her assistants said, looking at the thousands of items still on display. "There is not enough room on the ships." "Then we prioritize," Linda said firmly. "Take anything that is unique. Anything that cannot be recreated. If we have 2 of something, we leave 1 behind, but we save as much as we possibly can." They worked through the night filling cargo containers with humanity's cultural heritage. The Library of Congress was emptied of its rarest books. The National Archives surrendered its historical documents. Museums across the world sent their treasures to the spaceports in trucks that drove without stopping. In the Sahara Desert, construction crews dismantled a solar array that covered 50 square kilometers. The massive panels were unbolted, stacked, and loaded onto cargo ships. The technicians who maintained the array came with it, because the technology would be useless without people who knew how to install and repair it. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Wind farms in Europe were taken apart. Hydroelectric dams were stripped of their generators. Factories were disassembled piece by piece. Humanity was not just evacuating people. They were taking their entire industrial base with them. Jake Morrison coordinated the military evacuation from his command center. Every weapon, every vehicle, every piece of advanced technology was being moved off Earth. The things that were too big to move were rigged with explosives. When the council finally arrived, they would find a planet stripped of everything valuable. "We have a situation," Danny Cross reported. "The European space station is refusing to evacuate. They say someone needs to stay behind to manage the orbital traffic." "Tell them they have 2 hours to get to a ship," Jake said coldly. "After that, we blow the station. No one stays behind. No exceptions. The station crew evacuated 90 minutes later, the last people to leave Earth's orbit. Behind them, the space station's computers began a countdown that would end in a controlled explosion. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan worked in the orbital shipyards with a small team of volunteers. They were the last humans in space around Earth, and they were making sure the Council would regret ever coming here. Every satellite was reprogrammed with new code that would lock out anyone who did not have the encryption keys. Every automated defense platform was set to self-destruct if anyone tried to take control. "We are done here," Frank Morris said, looking at their work. "Everything is rigged. As soon as they try to access any system, it will wipe itself clean." "Good," Lisa said. "Let them inherit a dead planet with no infrastructure. Maybe they will think twice before they try to kick another species off their homeworld." They boarded the last shuttle and departed, leaving behind a network of booby traps and dead systems. The Council would find Earth intact but useless, a hollow prize that mocked their victory. The fleet began its departure in scattered groups. There was no grand farewell, no ceremonial last look at Earth. The ships simply fired their engines and accelerated away from the solar system as fast as their reactors could push them. They headed in 17 different directions, each group following navigation coordinates that had been calculated to lead them to the most isolated, unwanted regions of space. Captain Henry Blake set course for a system the Council surveys had labeled as worthless. The planets there had thin atmospheres and harsh climates, no valuable minerals, no strategic importance. It was exactly the kind of place no one would think to look for refugees. "Course laid in," Amy Porter said. "Estimated travel time is 19 days at maximum safe speed." "Make it 16 days at unsafe speed," Henry ordered. "We need to get these people somewhere they can breathe properly." The Venture shuddered as its engines pushed past their designed limits. In the crowded corridors below, people felt the vibration and held each other tighter. They were leaving everything they had ever known, heading toward a future that was completely uncertain. On another ship, Captain Steve Rogers made similar calculations. The Starhaven was heading to a different system, following a different set of coordinates. Humanity was splitting apart, spreading across the galaxy like seeds scattered by the wind. It was a desperate gamble. If they all went to one place, the Council might find them. By going to 17 different places, at least some of them would survive. "Do you think we will ever see Earth again?" his co-pilot asked. "No," Steve said honestly. "Earth belongs to the Council now. But we will build new homes, better ones, places where no one can tell us we do not belong." Back on Earth, the last automated systems performed their final tasks. Security cameras recorded empty streets and transmitted the images to servers that would erase themselves in another hour. Traffic lights continued to change colors for roads that had no cars. Streetlights turned on as the sun set, illuminating cities that had no people. In 60 hours, humanity had accomplished something that should have been impossible. 8 billion people had been evacuated. Countless tons of equipment and supplies had been loaded onto ships. The entire planet had been systematically stripped of everything valuable, and it had all been done in complete silence, with no announcement, no fanfare, no warning. When Ambassador Xyloth arrived 12 hours later, he found a ghost world. His landing parties searched through empty homes and abandoned offices. They found dishes still sitting on tables, clothes hanging in closets, toys scattered on floors. It looked like everyone had simply stepped outside for a moment and never came back. But they had come back. They had come back to pack their lives into boxes and carry those boxes to the spaceports. They had said goodbye to their homes, their cities, their entire planet. And then they had left, refusing to wait for the Council to officially tell them they were not wanted. In the United Earth Assembly Chamber, Xyloth found the message that had been left for him. He read it 3 times, trying to understand how the humans had known, how they had moved so quickly, how they had vanished so completely. The message ended with a single line that would haunt him for years. "We did not wait to be told twice." Ambassador Xyloth stood in his private quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, staring at the empty planet below. 3 days had passed since his arrival at Earth, and his team had found nothing. No humans, no explanations, just empty cities and silent streets that mocked everything the Galactic Council represented. His aide Kelrix entered the room carrying another stack of reports. Every single one said the same thing: empty, abandoned, deserted. The word appeared so many times that Xyloth had started to hate it. "The survey of Tokyo is complete," Kelrix said nervously. Like all the others, the city shows signs of rapid but organized evacuation. No bodies, no indication of violence or panic. They simply left. How many people lived in Tokyo? Xyloth asked. 37 million in the metropolitan area, and they all vanished in less than 3 days. Xyloth shook his head. It should be impossible, but the evidence was everywhere. In New York, landing parties had found apartments with food still in refrigerators. In London, offices had computers still running, their screens showing work that had been abandoned mid-task. In Mumbai, trains sat in stations with their doors open, waiting for passengers who would never come. The humans had left in such a hurry that they had not bothered to turn things off properly. But they had taken everything that mattered. Every person, every piece of important technology, every cultural artifact worth saving. The cities were intact, but they were hollow shells, empty monuments to a civilization that had chosen to vanish rather than submit. Kelrix pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's orbital space. We have completed the survey of near-Earth space. All human satellites and space stations are gone. Most appear to have been deliberately destroyed. The debris fields suggest controlled demolitions rather than accidents. They did not want us to have their technology, Xyloth said. They would rather destroy it than let us claim it. Another officer entered the room, his face showing confusion. Ambassador, we have analyzed the spaceport records. According to the data, there were approximately 12,000 ships registered to humanity. We have located all 12,000 ships. Where? Xyloth demanded. Still docked at their home ports. Empty. Every single one has been stripped of its fuel and supplies, but the ships themselves are here. Xyloth felt cold understanding settle over him. They used different ships, unregistered vessels, commercial craft that were never officially reported to the Council. They evacuated using ships we did not know existed. It was a devastating realization. The Council had always required all spacefaring species to register their vessels. It was supposed to maintain order and safety, but humanity had apparently built thousands of ships without ever informing the Council, and now those ships had carried 8 billion people to unknown destinations. How did we not know? Kelrix whispered. Because we assumed they would follow our rules, Xyloth said bitterly. We assumed they would be honest. We assumed they would behave like proper Council members. We were wrong. The search expanded to every human colony world that the Council knew about. These were the planets humanity had been officially developing for the past 50 years. Small settlements that were supposed to eventually house surplus population from Earth. Surely some of the evacuees had gone there. The reports came back negative. Every human colony showed normal population levels. No surge of refugees. No sign that anyone new had arrived. The evacuation fleet had not gone to the obvious destinations. Where did they go? Emperor Vaxen demanded when Xyloth reported his findings. The Emperor's rage had cooled into something more dangerous. A cold fury that made his subordinates nervous. 8 billion people do not simply disappear into empty space. They clearly had a plan, Your Majesty, Xyloth said carefully. They knew about the decree before we officially delivered it. They must have intercepted our communications somehow. That gave them time to prepare. You are telling me that not only did they escape, but they also compromised our secure communications? Vaxen's voice was deadly quiet. This grows worse with every report. The Emperor ordered a massive search operation. Scout ships were dispatched to every system within 500 light-years of Earth. They were given orders to search thoroughly and report any signs of human presence. The Council would find them no matter how well they tried to hide. But weeks passed with no results. The scout ships found nothing. A few ships disappeared entirely, their fate unknown. Others reported strange sensor readings that vanished before they could investigate properly. But no one found any trace of 8 billion missing humans. Meanwhile, the Council faced a growing problem. News of humanity's disappearance had spread throughout the galaxy. Other species were asking uncomfortable questions. If the Council could not control one species enough to properly banish them, what did that say about the Council's authority? The Palaxian Trade Guild sent a formal inquiry asking why Earth had been declared off-limits if it was completely empty. The Corthan Federation questioned whether the Council had the right to banish species from their homeworlds at all. Several smaller species began to wonder if they might be next. Emperor Vaxen tried to control the narrative. claiming that humanity had been relocated successfully and the matter was closed. But too many people had seen the reports. Too many knew the truth. Humanity had not been relocated. They had vanished, and the Council had no idea where they had gone. Xyloth returned to Earth one last time, 3 months after the evacuation. He walked through the empty streets of Washington, looking at buildings that had once housed the government of an entire species. The monuments still stood. The museums were empty but intact. The great library sat silent, its shelves bare. In the United Earth Assembly Chamber, the message still displayed on the main screen. Xyloth read it again, paying attention to details he had missed before. The timestamp showed it had been recorded 71 hours before the official decree was transmitted. That meant humanity had known about the decision almost as soon as it was made. They were listening to us the entire time, Xyloth said to Kelrix. They knew our plans before we announced them. They knew our security codes. They knew everything. What do we do now? Kelrix asked. Xyloth looked around the empty chamber. We report that Earth is ready for conversion to a nature preserve as the Emperor ordered. We tell the Council that the banishment was successful, and we hope that humanity stays hidden, because if they ever decide to come back, they will be far more dangerous than they were before. The Council officially took possession of Earth 6 months after the evacuation. Environmental teams arrived to begin removing all traces of human civilization. They found the task more difficult than expected. The cities were too large to simply demolish. The infrastructure was too extensive to easily erase. In the end, they settled for letting nature slowly reclaim what humanity had left behind. But even as plants began growing through cracks in the pavement and animals returned to empty parks, everyone who worked on Earth felt uncomfortable. It was not the peaceful nature preserve the Council had envisioned. It was a tomb, a memorial to a species that had been driven away and had chosen to leave nothing behind but ghosts. Emperor Vaxon never admitted that the banishment had been a failure. Officially, humanity had been successfully relocated and the matter was closed. But privately, he became obsessed with finding them. He increased funding for long-range scouts. He ordered his intelligence services to monitor every communication in the galaxy for any hint of human presence. He offered rewards for information about their whereabouts. Nothing worked. Humanity had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The only evidence they had been real was the empty planet they left behind. 2 years after the evacuation, a junior analyst in the Council's Exploration Division noticed something strange. Several star systems that had been surveyed and dismissed as worthless were now showing unusual energy readings. The readings were faint and sporadic, easily dismissed as sensor glitches or natural phenomena. But when plotted on a map, they formed a pattern. 17 systems, all in different directions from Earth, all in regions the Council had declared uninhabitable or economically useless. All showing similar anomalous readings. The analyst brought his findings to his superior, who dismissed them as coincidence. But the analyst could not shake the feeling that he had found something important. He filed his report and went back to his regular duties, never knowing that he had discovered the truth. Humanity had not vanished. They had scattered. 17 fleets had gone to 17 different systems, systems so harsh and unwelcoming that the Council had never thought to look there. They were out there in the darkness building new homes on worlds that were supposed to be impossible to colonize. And they were waiting. Not for revenge necessarily, not for vindication, just waiting to see what would happen next. They had escaped the Council's decree. They had refused to be victims. Now they would see if they could build something better than what they had left behind. Xyloth sometimes thought about the humans during his quiet moments. He wondered where they had gone. He wondered if they were surviving or suffering. He wondered if they blamed him for what had happened, even though he had just been following orders. Most of all, he wondered if they would ever come back. And if they did. 3 years had passed since the Exodus, and Captain Henry Blake stood on the surface of a world that had no name in any Council database. The humans who lived here called it Haven, because it had given them shelter when nowhere else would. The sky was purple instead of blue, and the air was thin enough that newcomers needed masks for the first few months. But it was home. The city around him bore little resemblance to the cramped, desperate refugee camp it had been when they first arrived. The initial domes had been replaced with permanent structures built from local materials. The hydroponic farms that had kept them alive in those early days had expanded into vast agricultural complexes that produced more food than the colony could eat. Haven was not just surviving, it was thriving. Population just hit 2 million, Amy Porter said, reviewing her datapad. We have achieved complete self-sufficiency in food production, water recycling, and power generation. The terraforming project is ahead of schedule. In another 5 years, we might not need the atmosphere processors. Henry watched children playing in a park that had been built where a landing pad used to sit. Those children had been born here on Haven. They had never seen Earth. They spoke with accents that were already different from their parents, using words borrowed from a dozen Earth languages mixed together into something new. We are not refugees anymore, Henry said. We are colonists, pioneers. This is our world now. Similar transformations were happening across 16 other systems. Each of the scattered fleets had found their designated planets and begun the hard work of building new civilizations from nothing. The planets the Council had dismissed as worthless turned out to have their own advantages once humans started looking. Properly, Jake Morrison commanded the military headquarters on a moon that orbited a gas giant in a system the Council charts listed as completely barren. The moon had no atmosphere and no resources worth mining. It was exactly the kind of place no one would ever bother to visit, which made it perfect for building a hidden military base. The facilities were carved deep into the lunar rock, invisible to any orbital scan. Geothermal energy from the moon's core provided unlimited power. The low gravity made it easy to launch ships, and the location, far from any trade route or inhabited system, meant they could operate without anyone noticing. We have completed the new ship designs, his chief engineer reported during a briefing. The Council's technology was deliberately inefficient to keep species dependent on their infrastructure. We have improved engine efficiency by 35% and developed our own faster-than-light communication system. Independent communication? Jake asked sharply. Completely independent. It does not use the Council's relay network. They cannot monitor it, intercept it, or shut it down. Every colony can now talk to every other colony without anyone knowing. That was a game changer. The Council controlled galactic communication through their relay system. Every message that traveled between stars went through Council infrastructure, which meant the Council could read anything they wanted. Humanity's new system broke that monopoly completely. Linda Hayes worked on the colony-designated archive, a small world with a stable climate perfect for preservation. The museums and libraries that had been evacuated from Earth now had permanent homes in climate-controlled vaults carved into mountainsides. But Archive had become more than just a storage facility. It had become humanity's new center of learning. Universities had sprung up around the archives. Students came from all 17 colonies to study human history, art, literature, and science. A new generation was growing up with access to all of humanity's accumulated knowledge, learning from the mistakes and triumphs of the past. We are not just preserving the past, Linda told a group of visiting students. We are building the future. Everything we learn here, every discovery we make, goes back to improve all the colonies. We share everything. No secrets, no competition, just cooperation. The students listened with the intensity of young people who understood they were part of something important. They had grown up hearing stories of Earth, the beautiful world their parents had been forced to abandon. But they also heard stories of the Council, the arrogant empire that had tried to control humanity and failed. Chief Engineer Lisa Morgan led the Technology Development Initiative on a colony called Innovation. The planet had harsh conditions, extreme temperature swings, and frequent storms, but it also had rare minerals that were perfect for advanced electronics manufacturing. The engineers who had fled Earth now worked in research facilities that would have been impossible in Council space. We have developed new materials that exceed Council specifications by an order of magnitude, Lisa announced during a system-wide conference call. Better hull armor, more efficient power cells, faster computers. Everything we were not allowed to research under Council regulations. Why were these things forbidden? One of the younger engineers asked. Because the Council was afraid, Frank Morris explained. Afraid that if species developed better technology, they would not need the Council anymore. So they made regulations that kept everyone dependent. We are no longer bound by those regulations. Not everyone in the colonies was happy with hiding. Commander Greg Phillips led a vocal faction on the military colony called Defiance. His people believed humanity should announce their existence and challenge the council directly. "We are living in shadows like criminals," Greg said during one of the regular council meetings that connected all 17 colony governors. "We did nothing wrong except exist, and yet we hide as if we are ashamed. I say we show the council what we have built. Show them that they failed to break us." Karen White, governor of the largest civilian colony, Harmony, disagreed strongly. "Going back now would be foolish. We are building something better here. Something free. Why would we risk that just to prove a point to people who already decided they do not want us? Because they made us leave our home." Greg shot back. "Because they voted to banish us like we were some kind of disease. Do we really want to teach our children that running away is how you handle bullies?" "We did not run away," Henry Blake interjected calmly. "We made a strategic retreat. We chose to leave on our terms rather than let them force us out on theirs. That was not cowardice. That was intelligence." The debate continued for hours with no clear resolution. The colonies were united in their independence from the council, but divided on whether to eventually reveal themselves or remain hidden forever. For now, they continued building and growing, postponing the decision for another day. The success of the colonies attracted unexpected attention. A few ships from minor species, ones that had been mistreated by the council, began appearing near the borders of human space. They came looking for the humans they had heard rumors about, the species that had vanished rather than accept subjugation. One such ship appeared near Haven, its crew desperate and out of supplies. They were refugees from a species called the Vexar, whose homeworld had been seized by the council for the same reasons Earth had been taken. They had nowhere else to go. Henry Blake made the decision to help them. Bring them down. Give them food and medicine, then find out what they need. The Vexar captain, whose name translated roughly to Broken Wing, could barely believe what he was seeing when he toured Haven's facilities. "You built all this in 3 years?" "The council said the planet was uninhabitable." "The council says a lot of things," Henry replied. "Most of them are lies designed to keep everyone weak and dependent. You want to know the secret of how we survived? We stopped listening to them." Word spread. More refugee ships arrived, not many, but a steady trickle. Some were turned away if they seemed like possible council spies. Others were welcomed if they were genuinely in need. The human colonies began to develop a reputation as places where outcasts could find shelter. "We are becoming a threat to the council whether we want to or not," Jake Morrison said during one meeting. "Every species we help is another crack in their authority. Eventually, they will notice. Not let them notice," Lisa Morgan said. "We are ready. Our technology is better. Our ships are faster. Our people are united in ways the council species never were. If they want to fight, they will lose." But others urged caution. "We are not ready for open war," Karen White argued. "We have 17 colonies against an empire of hundreds of worlds. We need more time." The colonies continued their quiet growth. The population was approaching 20 billion as families grew, and refugees were accepted. New industries developed. Trade began between colonies, each specializing in what they were best suited for. Haven grew food. Innovation manufactured electronics. Archive provided education. Defiance trained soldiers. They were building an entire civilization from scratch, and they were doing it without any guidance or permission from the council. Every success was proof that the council's authority was not necessary. Every advance was evidence that humanity could thrive when left alone. Ambassador Xyloth would have been horrified if he could have seen what humanity had accomplished. The species he had thought would struggle to survive without council support had instead flourished. The harsh worlds he had assumed would kill them had been tamed. The isolation he believed would weaken them had made them stronger. 5 years after the Exodus, every screen in council space lit up simultaneously with a transmission that could not be blocked, traced, or interrupted. The message appeared on government displays, personal devices, public screens, and military communications. It was transmitted on every frequency, in every language, impossible to ignore. Director Paul Chen appeared on the screen, older now with gray in his hair and lines on his face that spoke of difficult years. But his eyes were sharp and his voice was steady. Behind him stood representatives from all 17 colonies, a wall of human faces that showed the diversity of the species the council had tried to banish. 5 years ago, the Galactic Council voted to remove humanity from Earth. Paul began. Emperor Vaxon cast the deciding vote. You decided we were too dangerous to have as neighbors. You gave us 100 years to leave our homeworld. You expected us to beg for mercy, to negotiate for better terms, to accept your judgment with gratitude for being allowed to exist at all. He paused, letting the silence stretch across the galaxy. We did not beg, we left. But we left on our terms, not yours. We evacuated 8 billion people in 60 hours. We took everything that mattered to us. We left you an empty planet and a mystery you could not solve. Henry Blake stepped forward, his appearance showing the confidence of someone who had built a thriving colony from nothing. In the 5 years since that day, we have established 17 colonies in systems you declared worthless. We have turned harsh, unwelcoming planets into homes. We have grown food where you said nothing would grow. We have built cities where you said life could not survive. We did it without your help, without your permission, without your approval. Lisa Morgan continued the message. We have developed technology that surpasses your regulations. Faster engines, better power systems, independent communication networks. Everything you told us was impossible or forbidden, we have achieved. We do not need your counsel. We do not need your trade networks. We do not need your protection. We never did. Jake Morrison's voice carried a harder edge. We are not declaring war, but we are declaring independence. As of this transmission, the 17 systems we inhabit are formally claimed by the Free Human Commonwealth. Any council ship entering our territory without invitation will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Karen White's tone was more diplomatic but equally firm. We are open to trade with any species that wishes to trade with us on equal terms. We will defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us, and we will help any species that the Council decides to throw away, just as they threw us away. You taught us an important lesson about your version of justice. Paul Chen returned to the center of the screen. Emperor Vaxon, if you are watching, and I know you are, I want to thank you. You thought you were banishing us. You thought you were punishing us. Instead, you freed us from a system designed to keep us weak and dependent. You cut chains we did not even realize we were wearing. For that, we owe you gratitude. The transmission ended with coordinates, not for the colonies themselves, but for 3 trade stations on the borders of human space. The invitation was clear. Humanity was ready to engage with the galaxy again, but only as equals, never as subjects. The reaction across Council space was immediate and chaotic. Some species applauded humanity's defiance. Others demanded military action. A few began to question whether the Council's authority was as absolute as they had always believed. Emperor Vaxon convened an emergency session of the Council. His rage was barely controlled as he addressed the assembled representatives. They mock us. They defy us openly. They claim territory without approval. We must respond with force immediately. But Ambassador Xyloth, who had witnessed the empty Earth and understood what humanity was capable of, raised a careful objection. Your Majesty, consider what we know. They evacuated 8 billion people in less than 3 days. They built 17 hidden colonies in 5 years. They developed technology that exceeds our own. If they accomplished all of that while hiding from us, what might they be capable of if we attack them directly? The debate raged for days. The military faction wanted immediate action. The diplomatic corps urged caution. The economic ministers worried about the implications of an independent human trade network. Everyone had opinions, but no one had solutions. The Palaxian Trade Guild made the first move. They were merchants and traders who had always chafed under council regulations. The opportunity to bypass council trade routes was too valuable to ignore. They sent a diplomatic ship to the coordinates humanity had provided. Captain Steve Rogers, now administrator of Trade Haven 1, greeted the Palaxian delegation personally. The space station was impressive, combining human engineering with materials harvested from the local system. It was clean, efficient, and designed to handle massive cargo volumes. Welcome to Trade Haven 1, Steve said. We are pleased someone had the sense to talk instead of threaten. The lead Palaxian diplomat, a merchant named Telox, looked around the station with obvious appreciation. This is remarkable. You built this in 5 years? We built this in 2 years, Steve corrected. The first 3 years we were busy building homes. Once we had our colonies stable, we turned our attention to trade infrastructure. We move fast when we are not bound by council regulations requiring 15 committees to approve every decision. The trade negotiations that followed were revolutionary. Humans offered technology the council had restricted, advanced materials, and most importantly, access to trade routes that did not go through Council space. The Palaxians saw the opportunity immediately. Within months, a dozen species were trading with the free human commonwealth. Within a year, several were openly questioning why they remained in the Council at all. The humans were not just offering better prices. They were offering something the Council had never provided: respect. Emperor Vaxon watched his authority crumble slowly. Species that had followed his every command for decades were now making independent deals with humanity. The ban on human contact he had ordered was being ignored. His threats of consequences rang hollow when half his empire was profiting from human trade. His closest advisors urged him to accept reality. "Your Majesty, we cannot fight them without massive casualties. And even if we won, we would lose half our member species who are now economically dependent on human trade. We must negotiate," but Vaxon refused. "I will not negotiate with species that defied my decree. Humanity will be brought to heel or destroyed." He sent a fleet to one of the human trade stations, intending to blockade it and force humanity to submit. The fleet consisted of 200 warships, the largest military force the Council had assembled in decades. The admiral in command, a Threxian loyalist named Corthan, was confident of victory. The human response was swift and devastating. Ships appeared from nowhere, using stealth technology the Council did not know existed. They did not attack the Council fleet directly. Instead, they disabled the fleet's engines with electromagnetic pulses, leaving 200 warships drifting helplessly in space. Jake Morrison's voice came over every ship's communication system. "You came to our territory with weapons ready. We have disabled your ships but harmed no one. Your crews are safe. We will provide rescue ships to tow you back to Council space. But understand this clearly. If you come again with hostile intent, we will not be so generous." The Council fleet limped home, humiliated and defeated, without a single shot fired. The message was clear. Humanity had technology the Council could not match. They had chosen mercy, but they were clearly capable of far worse. The incident broke something in Emperor Vaxon's authority. 3 major species formally withdrew from the Council within weeks. 5 others announced they were seeking independent trade agreements with humanity. The empire Vaxon had ruled with absolute power for 30 years was falling apart. In desperation, he made a final offer. The Council would apologize for the banishment. Humanity would be welcomed back with full membership and no restrictions. Earth would be returned to human control. All past grievances would be forgiven. The 17 colony governors met to discuss the offer. The debate was fierce. Some wanted to accept, to reclaim Earth and take their place in galactic politics. Others wanted to refuse and maintain their hard-won independence. Paul Chen called for a vote. The result was overwhelming. 93% voted to refuse the Council's offer. "Send them our response," Paul instructed. "Thank them for the offer. Tell them we appreciate the gesture. But explain that we have found something better out here. Freedom to make our own choices. The ability to succeed or fail based on our own merits. No emperor telling us where we can live. No council deciding if we deserve to exist." Greg Phillips, who had long advocated for confrontation, smiled grimly. "The best revenge is living well. I think we have proven that." The formal response to the Council was polite but firm. Humanity would remain independent. They would continue trading with whoever wished to trade with them. They would help refugees from species the Council mistreated, and they would defend their territory against anyone who threatened them. But they would not rejoin the Council under any circumstances. Earth remained empty, a monument to the Council's failure. Some suggested humanity reclaim it, but most preferred to let it stand as a